The streets of London were wet with the rain that had been falling all day. Beneath the grey sky, a boy and girl stood close to each other near the River Thames. Their hearts were racing as they held hands, but it wasn't from the cold or the rain. It was from fear of what was coming next. He didn't want to leave. She didn't want him to go. But fate, in the form of their parents, had different plans. They met when they were just 14 years old. The connection was instant, as if they had known each other in another life. The boy, Samuel, and the girl, Claire, quickly became inseparable. They spent their days walking through London's parks, stealing glances and secret smiles during class, and talking for hours on the phone when they should have been studying. By the time they turned 17, they were madly in love, convinced they would marry and spend the rest of their lives together. But Samuel's parents had a different vision for his future. His father was a businessman who wanted his son to study in America, where the opportunities were endless. They believed love was something that could wait, and that Samuel's future depended on education, not a teenage romance. Samuel, however, didn't see it that way. His world revolved around Claire, and the thought of leaving her behind was unbearable. One rainy evening by the river, he told her everything. "They want me to go to America," Samuel said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "They're making me leave London. They're making me leave you." Claire's heart broke at his words, but she tried to be strong. "We'll be okay," she whispered, though her voice trembled. "You'll go, and we'll write to each other every day. 4 years isn't forever, I'll wait for you." Samuel nodded, but doubt clouded his mind. He wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that love could conquer everything, but deep down he knew that distance and time had a way of changing things. The day Samuel left for America was the hardest day of his life. His parents took him to the airport, offering words of encouragement about his bright future. But Samuel's heart was somewhere else, with Claire, who stood quietly at the gate, waving goodbye with tears in her eyes. As the plane soared into the sky, Samuel felt like a piece of him had been left behind. Life in America wasn't what he had imagined. Sure, the campus was beautiful, the classes were challenging, and there were opportunities everywhere, but none of it mattered without Claire. He thought of her constantly, and true to their promise, they wrote letters to each other every week. In her letters, Claire described her days in London, the places they used to go together, and how much she missed him. Samuel shared stories about his new life in America, but no matter how much he tried, it always felt empty without her. But as the months turned into years, the letters began to slow down. Life moved on, for both of them. Claire's parents started pressuring her to move on too. 4 long years later, Samuel finally returned to London. He had graduated with honours, just as his parents had wanted. But as the plane touched down in the city that once felt like home, he was filled with nervous anticipation. Would things be the same with Claire? When he arrived at his parents' house, they greeted him with proud smiles and open arms, but Samuel wasn't thinking about them. All he wanted was to see Claire again. As soon as he could, he rushed to her house, eager to pick up where they left off. But when he knocked on the door, it wasn't Claire who opened it. Her father stood in the doorway, his expression cold and distant. "You shouldn't be here," her father said sternly. Samuel's heart dropped. "I need to see her, please." Her father hesitated before speaking again, his voice laced with regret. "She's married now, Samuel." Samuel's world crumbled in an instant. Married? No, that can't be. She was supposed to wait for me. But the reality was worse than anything he had imagined. Claire had been pressured by her own parents, just like Samuel had been. Her parents had arranged for her to marry one of the richest men in the city, someone they believed was far more suitable for her than Samuel ever could be. Claire had resisted, but in the end, she had no choice. The marriage was a cage, and she was trapped. Samuel couldn't handle the pain. Claire, the girl he had loved for years, the girl who had promised to wait for him, was now gone. She wasn't his anymore, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't erase the image of her with another man. He turned to alcohol to numb the pain. At first, it was just a drink or two to take the edge off. But as the weeks went by, the drinks became more frequent, and then came the drugs. He wanted to forget, to drown the memories of what he had lost. People in his life tried to help him, but he pushed them all away. His parents, who had once been so proud of his success, were now filled with regret. They had sent him to America to build a future, but they hadn't realized they were tearing apart his present. Even another girl, Sarah, tried to reach out to him. She was kind and caring, always there for Samuel when he needed someone. She saw the brokenness in him, and she wanted to help. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't replace Claire in his heart. Samuel's love for Claire was like a scar that wouldn't heal, and the more he drank and used drugs, the deeper the wound became. Claire too was suffering. She was married to a man who treated her like a possession, not a partner. Her husband was rich, powerful, and cold. He didn't love her, and she didn't love him. But every time she thought about Samuel, the guilt tore her apart. She had promised to wait for him, but in the end, she hadn't been strong enough to fight her parents. She had lost him, and now she was trapped in a life she never wanted. Claire had heard about Samuel's struggles. The rumours about his drinking and drug use had reached her ears, and each time she heard them, her heart ached. She knew he was suffering because of her, because of the choices she had made. She wanted to reach out to him, to tell him that she still loved him, but she couldn't. Her husband wouldn't allow it. He was possessive and controlling, and even the mention of Samuel's name sent him into a rage. One cold night, Samuel found himself wandering the streets of London, his mind foggy from the alcohol and drugs coursing through his veins. He didn't know where he was going, but his feet led him to a familiar place, Claire's house. He stood outside her gate, looking up at the window where she used to stand and wave goodbye to him. His heart pounded in his chest, but his body was weak, worn down by years of addiction and pain. Inside, Claire was sitting by the window, looking out at the rain. When she saw Samuel standing there, her heart stopped. She wanted to run to him, to hold him, to tell him that she still loved him, that she had never stopped loving him. But her husband was there, watching her every move. "Don't even think about it," he said coldly as he noticed where her eyes had gone. "You're mine now. You'll never see him again." Tears streamed down Claire's face as she watched Samuel standing alone in the rain. He was pale, weak, and broken. She wanted to help him, but she couldn't. She was trapped. Outside, Samuel felt his body giving up. The years of heartache, the drinking, the drugs, it had all taken its toll. He collapsed in front of the gate, his body too weak to go on. The last thing he saw before his eyes closed forever was the light from Claire's window. The next morning, London was quiet, the rain having finally stopped. Samuel's lifeless body was found outside Claire's house, a tragic reminder of the love that had been destroyed by time, distance, and the pressures of family. Claire's heart was shattered. She had lost the one person she truly loved, not to time or distance, but to the choices that had been forced upon them both. As her husband looked on, indifferent to the pain she felt, Claire knew that she would never heal from this. Samuel had died waiting for her, and she had failed him. The story of Samuel and Claire became a whispered tragedy in the streets of London, a tale of young love, torn apart by forces beyond their control. Samuel had loved Claire until the very end, and though they never got to live their dream, their love had left a mark on both of them, a mark that would never fade. Sometimes, love doesn't get the happy ending it deserves, but in the quiet moments, when the world slows down, the memory of that love lingers on, a reminder of what might have been.